have plans, and by plans I mean that I have things that I want to buy. And I'm saying this as someone who's pretty focused on making money and saving money. You guys might have already seen that at the beginning of 2024, Dan and I increased our income, and of my new monthly take-home pay, I'm investing $2,000 a month and then spending on the rest of my budget out of the other $2,459.91 per month. Now, of that $2,459.91 that I have available to spend, I'm actually only hoping to spend on my typical monthly expenses about $2,159.91 of it. That leaves me an additional $300 a month that I could potentially be saving, which adds up to $3,600 for the year. So that's a grand total of $2,300 a month that I'll be keeping every single month for my future self, as long as I stick to my budget, of course. So I feel like the next logical question is, what am I saving that money for? What am I ultimately planning on spending that money on? Well, we have a few different things that we're planning on doing with the money, and we thought it'd be fun in this video to go over all the different stuff that we're saving up for right now.
The first thing that we're saving for is a big one, and it's probably the biggest expense that we're ever gonna have, and that's buying a house. We posted a video recently about how we're starting the home buying process for the very first time, and we've kind of split the bigger goal of buying a house into two phases. So one is looking into our current financial situation and actually putting ourselves into a position where we can actually buy a house soon. And then two is looking for and ultimately buying a house. The reason there's some additional work in figuring out our current financial situation is because we're self-employed. This pretty much impacts the types of lenders that we have access to and the amount of money that those lenders are willing to give us. Now, when we talk about A-lenders, think bigger banks and financial institutions. Now, they typically look for consistently growing income, and they tend to favor anyone who has an employer. Now, for us, after quitting our jobs, that obviously hasn't been the path that we've been on. Couple that with higher interest rates in general right now, the additional expenses outside of the basic down payment and closing costs are what's taking us a bit of time to work through. But in general, we do know that this goal will be happening sooner rather than later, so we do want to start saving more money. So far, we've been saving within our high interest savings accounts, but Steph will be opening up an FHSA or first home savings account in the next few months, and she'll be maxing that out at $8,000 for the year, which will be super helpful for us. We'll do another video all about that and what my plans are too, but we are going to be sharing more on how we're continuing to save for this goal moving forward.
Okay, so the next definitely still big expense that we're saving up for right now is travel. We hadn't actually done much traveling together throughout our relationship. We've been dating for almost 7 years now, but up until last year. Last year we did a few different trips. The first one was to Spain and Portugal. That we had planned like months in advance. We did a full 16 days traveling around those countries. It was really awesome. We ended up spending a total of $9,829.30. I know the specific total, very specific number there, but I know that because we did a whole video breaking down the costs. On top of that, we also went to Lake Como for a friend's wedding, and that was awesome, less expected, but we had a really nice time there. And then we also did a quick 48-hour trip to Los Angeles to watch our favorite NBA player, LeBron James, play at home. That was really fun too. Overall, we had such a nice time, even though, like I said, we haven't done a lot of traveling together in the past. We really enjoyed everything we did last year, and we know we want to do some more traveling in the future, but we've been thinking about ways that we can potentially save some money while still traveling and having some really awesome experiences. One option that we've been thinking about is potentially moving abroad somewhere for a few months, potentially 6 months, we'll see, and then doing some traveling and trips around from there. Now, if we did that, if and when we do that, our plan would be to actually move out of our current apartment here in Toronto, put our stuff in storage, I guess, in the meantime, and then find somewhere to live and rent out short term in the country that we're moving to. Ideally, somewhere that costs about the same as our rent here. Obviously, our rent here is a great price, so that might be hard, but we'd have the flexibility, right, of looking and living in a place that has rent costs that are similar. Now, the good thing if we do this is that we're not doubling up our accommodation costs at all, which saves a lot in the terms of travel expenses. All it would be is the cost of our initial flights and then the day trips to wherever it is or weekend trips to wherever it is that we want to travel around, which would be a lot cheaper than flying from Canada every single time. What's nice about this option for us is that it would save us a lot of money, right, by not paying. I think that's a big thing for traveling actually in general. Even if you're gone like 16 days in a row, that 16 days you're still paying rent and internet, hydro, all those fixed expenses back home. We'd be eliminating that and just doing, again, initial flights, whatever little costs there are for traveling here and there, but it would be substantially lower. And when we work from home and work for ourselves, we have the flexibility to do that too, so it would work out kind of nicely for us. And then our plan would be whenever we're eventually ready to come back to Toronto or Canada in general, we'd then find a new place for us to live here. Again, it could be a home that we've bought in the meantime. It's potentially just somewhere else that we're going to be renting instead. I think the hardest thing about this, other than obviously getting it all set up in the first place, would be the fact that, again, our rent price is really great here. But at the same time, we've been here for almost 6 years now. We're ready to try something new. At some point, we're gonna have to move out anyway, so we'll see. This is definitely still just a TBD plan for us, nothing set in stone or tangible yet, but if we do decide to do this, we'll definitely have to save some money up for it, of course. We don't have a specific goal amount yet, but if it becomes more of a reality once we start to actually plan it out more concretely, then we would probably do that. But in general, right now, it's definitely in our minds and motivating us to make sure we save money where we can. The other thing that's more short term and more for sure gonna happen is that we're probably gonna go take a quick little trip to Atlanta to visit some of our friends who live there. In that case, we'd be staying with them, so there'd be no like cost of a hotel or anything, but we do need to save up for flights and then food when we're there, so that's something to make sure we're saving for as well.
The next thing I wanted to cover was what's happening with the money that we're investing. Obviously, investing is different than saving, but people still invest for a variety of different reasons. Like for example, someone could be investing with the purpose of then pulling that money out and spending it on a house, or they could be investing with the intention of using that money for education. For us, and when I say us, I mean me and Steph, our investing is for the purpose of retirement, so very, very long-term investing. Like I mentioned before, we're also starting to save money to buy a house, and we'll talk more about what our exact plans are when it comes to saving and investing, like how much money we're going to be putting towards our high-interest savings account versus how much money we're going to be investing within our FHSA, which is the first home savings account that just launched recently in Canada. But overall, our goal has always been, ever since we started investing a few years ago, was always to invest for retirement. The biggest reason for this is that the earlier you start investing, the more time you have for your money to grow. Now, there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can calculate how much money you'll need in retirement, but to give you a really quick example, let's say you think you'll spend $40,000 a year in retirement and you think you'll be retired for at least 30 years. $40,000 a year for 30 years is $1.2 million. Now, let's say you saved $12,000 a year over the next 30 years. At the end, you'd have $360,000. Instead, if you invested $12,000 a year over the next 30 years, and let's say the annual average return was 8% a year, you'd have over $1.3 million. So we've made it our goal to invest as much as we possibly can, especially while we're young, in order to maximize the amount of years that our money has to compound. On top of that, the older we get, the more we'll want to prioritize spending in other areas. So for example, buying a house, starting a family, getting married, having kids, contributing to kids' education funds, basically all these different areas that start popping up over time. If we're able to build up the foundation for our investing first, that's obviously ideal. So on top of saving for travel and buying our first home, we're also going to be saving or investing for a future retirement.
Okay, so before I get into the last thing that we're saving for right now, I want to talk about how all this money that we're saving is obviously being held in different places, specifically our high interest savings accounts. Now, the good news is that money held in a savings account is protected by CDIC, or the Canada Deposit Insurance Corporation. We're actually working with them on this video, and if you haven't heard of CDIC before, they're a federal crown corporation that was created by Parliament in 1967 to ensure eligible bank deposits up to $100,000 per category that's held at one of their member Canadian banks or federally regulated credit unions. You automatically have their protection if you bank with one of their member institutions if they ever were to fail. You don't have to sign up on your own. Like I mentioned, they cover Canadian or foreign currency, GICs, and other term deposits held within savings accounts, checking accounts, and these other accounts listed on screen. They don't cover mutual funds, stocks and bonds, ETFs, or crypto, as those products aren't guaranteed. Again, they cover up to $100,000 per category per financial institution. So I could have $100,000 in a savings account at one bank and $100,000 in a savings account at another bank, and both would be protected. Or I could have $100,000 in a savings account at one bank, and I could have $100,000 in insured deposits in an FHSA at that same institution, and both would be protected. I love knowing that CDIC is there in case anything ever goes wrong with the bank I'm using, and again, there's nothing that you have to do in order to have their protection. It's free and automatic. Thank you again to CDIC for working with us on this video, and if you have any questions about CDIC, ask away in the comments below and check out their website for more. Okay, so the last few things that we're saving up for throughout the year are what I call our yearly big expenses. I'm gonna actually use my budget tracker to show you guys this. So this is my budget. You can see that every month I have budgeted my categories for what I think I'll be spending on a monthly basis, but I also have these big expenses to the side. These are like one-off things. I don't spend on them every single month, but I know one time for each of them per year I'm gonna spend on these categories. So for me, those big expenses are dentist appointments, Christmas gifts, and my hair appointment. It's a big amount because it's where I go and cut and dye my hair once per year. But those are the big expenses that I know are coming up. I just don't budget for monthly. So again, the amounts that I have set for them is $550 for the dentist appointment, $1,000 for Christmas gifts, and then about $750 for my hair appointment, for a total of $2,300. Now, what's nice about this is you can actually see it right here. If I do stick to my budget every single month, I'll have that leftover $300 that I can save up, or $3,600 for the year. And obviously that would cover these one-time big expenses with still $1,300 left over. But that is the last thing that we save up for on that monthly basis, is these other big yearly expenses.
Thanks again to CDIC for working with us on this video, and make sure you guys don't forget to let us know what you're saving for down in the comment box below. And yeah, if you haven't already seen any of our previous videos next door where we literally talk about how we budget our money in order to actually save, make sure you check those out, and we'll be back next week with a new video.